The cries of two newborns pierced the hushed grandeur of the master bedroom, a sound not of celebration, but of a world splitting in two. Lady Esther, drenched in the sweat and exhaustion of her labor, reached out with trembling arms. Her husband, Sean O'Rian, beamed beside her, a proud patriarch seeing his lineage secured. The midwife, Isara, placed the first babe in Esther's arms, a boy with fair skin and a dusting of copper hair, glowing like a peach in the lamplight. A smile, brittle but real, touched Esther's lips. "Daniel," she whispered. Then Isara moved forward with the second child. The moment Esther saw him, all color drained from her face, leaving her as pale as the linen sheets. This boy was darker, his skin holding the warm, rich tone of the earth after a rain, his hair a tight, dark curl. Sean, mistaking her stillness for awe, chuckled, "2 sons! The Lord has doubled our blessing." But Isara, who had delivered every child on the O'Rian estate for 20 years, saw the truth. It wasn't shock. It was pure, unadulterated terror in Esther's wide eyes. "Take him," Esther breathed, her voice a strangled thread. She thrust the darker child away as if his touch burned. "Take him from here, now." Sean's smile faltered. "Esther, love, what? I cannot look upon him," she cried, turning her face into the pillow, a sob tearing from her throat. "His color, it's ill fortune. Take him to the quarters. Let him be cared for there." A heavy silence descended, broken only by the soft wails of the infants. Confused but unwilling to distress his wife further, Sean gave a stiff nod to Isara. His joy was now clouded with unease. With a heart heavier than stone, Isara wrapped the fair child Daniel in silk and placed him in a silver cradle that gleamed like a star in the corner. Then she gathered the second boy into a simple, clean cloth. She held him close, feeling the fierce, equal beat of his heart against her own. The walk from the big house to the slave quarters was a journey between worlds. In the master bedroom, Daniel slept under a canopy, his every whimper attended to. In the cramped, earthy-smelling quarters, Isara fashioned a nest of straw and soft rags in a quiet corner. She laid the boy down, her calloused fingers brushing his cheek. "Hush now, little one," she murmured, a fierce protectiveness swelling within her. "The world may not know your name, but I shall. You are Bento." It was a strong name, a name that meant blessed, a silent defiance. As dawn broke, painting the estate in gold and shadow, the divide was cemented. Daniel, the heir, was celebrated. Bento, the secret, was hidden away. But as Isara watched the sunrise, she knew some truths are too alive to stay buried. She wasn't just holding a child, she was cradling a reckoning. The years unfolded, etching the lie into the very bones of the O'Rian estate. Daniel grew like a prized rose in a sheltered garden, pampered, educated, gleaming with the privilege that was his birthright. His laughter echoed in the high-ceilinged halls, a sound the house seemed to absorb with pride. Below, in the world of toil and dust, Bento grew like the resilient ivy on the stone walls, strong, observant, nurtured by a different kind of love. Isara was his anchor. She fed him stories instead of sugar, wisdom instead of wealth. She taught him the names of the stars, the language of the wind and the barley, and the quiet dignity of a task done well, even when it was commanded, not chosen. Lady Esther became a ghost in her own home. She poured all her fractured affection onto Daniel, her love for him laced with a frantic, desperate energy. But the sight of Bento was a poison to her soul. When she'd see him across the yard, carrying water or tending the goats, she would freeze, then turn away sharply, as if the sight of him, the living, growing evidence of her past, could unravel her completely. One stifling evening, Isara was returning from the herb garden when muffled, anguished voices stopped her cold. They leaked from the crack under the sewing-room door. Esther's voice, raw and broken. "I sinned, Mother." and God punished me on that birthing bed. He split my sin in two and made me look upon it every day. Isara's breath caught. She pressed against the cool wall, unseen. "Hush, child," that was the stern, fearful whisper of Esther's mother, Constance. "Pray that no one ever questions which boy is truly Sean's. He believes Daniel is his heir. The estate believes it. You must be strong. You must let the past lie. But it won't lie." Esther's sob was a gut-wrenching sound. "It walks. It breathes. It has toes eyes." The name hung in the humid air like gunpowder smoke. Toe. A young, kind-hearted enslaved man, gifted with horses, who had been sold away suddenly, mysteriously, years ago. A puzzle piece Isara had always held, now clicked into a devastating picture. The forbidden love, the frantic cover-up, the twin births that revealed all. Bento's face wasn't a curse, it was a memory of a love so potent it defied chains, and a society so cruel it would rather bury a child than face an inconvenient truth. Isara slipped away into the night, the weight of the secret now a burning coal in her chest. She returned to the quarters where Bento slept peacefully. Moonlight fell across his features, the strong jaw, the arch of his brow. She saw not a shameful secret, but a beautiful, undeniable truth, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her, that this truth would not stay in the shadows forever. Seasons turned, and the unspoken rule of the estate hardened. Daniel was the sun, Bento was the shadow, yet in their rare stolen moments, a passing in the yard, a shared glance from a distance, a silent recognition flickered. It unsettled Daniel, a question mark in his pampered world he couldn't yet articulate. The answer came not with words, but with water. A summer storm, fierce and sudden, descended on the valley. The river swelled, bursting its banks with a roar, turning the lower pastures into a churning brown sea. Chaos reigned. As everyone scrambled, Daniel, driven by a boy's reckless curiosity, sneaked away to witness the fury of nature. From the kitchen porch, Bento saw him go. A primal instinct, a jolt of connection he did not understand, set his feet moving before his mind could question. At the river's raging edge, the sodden bank gave way. Daniel slipped, a cry ripped from his throat as the current snatched him, dragging him toward the torrent. "Daniel!" The scream was Bento's. He didn't think. He plunged into the icy, muddy water, the current pulling at his legs. He fought, muscles straining, until his hand closed on his brother's wrist. Daniel's terrified eyes locked onto his. In that moment, there was no master, no servant, only two boys and the will to live. Bento planted his feet, finding purchase on a submerged root. With a strength born of a life of labor, he hauled Daniel back, both of them collapsing onto the higher ground, coughing, shivering, and coated in muck. It was there that Sean O'Ryan found them, his face ashen. He swept Daniel into his arms, but his eyes were fixed on Bento, who knelt in the mud, breath heaving. The boy he had ignored, the child had been taught to see as part of the scenery, had just saved his son's life with a courage that shook the foundations of Sean's world. Esther arrived, and the scene before her struck like a physical blow. Her golden son, safe in his father's arms because of her shadowed son. The two boys, side by side in their dishevelment, looked more alike than they ever had. The lie shed built her life upon cracked audibly in her soul. No one spoke of gratitude that day. The shock was too deep, but a new and uncomfortable awareness was born. The floodwaters receded, but the landscape of their lives was forever changed. In the days that followed, a heavy quiet settled over the big house. Daniel was recovering, but a different kind of fever had taken hold of him, a fever of the mind. The memory of the river was a loop in his head. The fear, the cold, the strong, certain grip that pulled him back. And over it, Bento's face, so alike his own in shape, yet so different in the world's eyes. The question that had tickled at the edge of his consciousness for years now roared. He found his father in the study, staring blankly at account books. Daniel stood before the heavy oak desk, his small frame tense with resolve. "Father," he began, his voice clear in the silent room, "why does Bento look like me?" Sean O'Ryan looked up as if struck. The simple, devastating question hung between them, stripping away pretense. He opened his mouth to offer a platitude, to dismiss it, but the words died. He saw his son not as a child, but as a seeker of truth. The image of Bento, heroic and covered in river mud, flashed before him, making any easy lie impossible. He said nothing. His silence was more telling than any answer. Daniel felt the world tilt. His father's inability to speak confirmed a terrifying, thrilling suspicion. The truth was too big for words. He left the study, the knot in his chest tightening, but his path forward suddenly clear. From the shadowed hallway, Esther had heard it all. Her son's question, her husband's crushing silence. It was the crack through which her crumbling world finally fell apart. She fled to her room, the dam of pretense breaking. Sobs, long suppressed, racked her body. She cried for Toe, for the love stolen. She cried for Bento, for the motherhood denied. She cried for the immense corrosive weight of a lie she could no longer carry. Her body, weakened by years of silent torment, began to fail her. The doctors called it a nervous decline. Isara, watching from a distance, knew it was the soul's rebellion. Isara felt the shifting tides. The secret was a poison killing the lady and corrupting the house. The boys, both innocent, were caught in its slow spill. With a courage that outweighed her fear, she sought out Sean O'Ryan. She found him on the veranda, a man adrift. "Master," she said, her voice low but steady, "there is a truth that is drowning this family. Bento is of this house's blood, but he is not your son." The words landed with the force of a hammer. Sean's knife clattered to the floor. The world he knew, the lineage, the certainty, the honor shattered into pieces. All the small doubts, the uncanny resemblances had brushed aside, coalesced into a brutal, undeniable picture. "Esther's child," Isara continued, her eyes holding his stunned gaze. His father was Toe. The name connected everything. The hurried sale years ago. Esther's strange aversion. The constant, gnawing guilt. Sean felt not just betrayal, but a profound, disorienting grief for the life he thought he had. He summoned Esther. The confrontation was silent at first, a chasm of pain stretching between them. When he finally found his voice, it was gravelly with hurt. "Whose child is that boy, Esther?" Esther, already broken, had no fight left. The story spilled out a tale of a forbidden connection, a love found and violently torn away, a fear that made her reject her own flesh and blood. She confessed not to wound him, but because the lie had finally consumed her. As the last word left her lips, her strength vanished and she collapsed. The big house held its breath. The truth, once spoken, could not be unspoken. In the quiet aftermath, a new reality was forged, not with fanfare, but with solemn, difficult grace. Sean O'Ryan, a man wrestling with a broken pride, made a choice. He called Bento and Daniel before him. Looking at them together, he finally saw them not as heir and servant, but as brothers bound by a shared history he had not written. "Bento," he said, the name formal on his tongue for the first time. "You are Esther's son. This is your home. You will have a place here, with your name and with respect." It was not a father's embrace, but it was an acknowledgement of humanity, a first step toward justice. Daniel, watching, felt a strange relief. The ghost that had haunted his home now had a name and a place. Without a word, he walked to Bento and offered his hand. It was not a master's greeting, but a brother's. He began, slowly, to share his world, a book, a lesson, a moment of quiet understanding. When Esther was well enough, she asked to see Bento alone. The proud lady was gone, replaced by a woman hollowed out by regret. She took his hand, her own trembling. "I denied you," she whispered, tears streaming freely, "because I was a coward. I was afraid of the past, and I made you pay the price. Can you ever forgive me?" Bento looked at the woman who was his mother, who had let fear rule her heart. He thought of his Sarah's love, of Daniel's hand offered in fellowship, of the river that had tried to claim them both. He saw not just her failure, but her profound, costly pain. He did not smile, but his grip on her hand was firm. "Now I know who I am," he said, his voice calm, clear, "and who you were. That is enough." It was not forgetfulness, but a grace that chose to free them both from the past's prison. The plantation would never be the same. The old order had fallen, not in revolt, but in revelation. Where silence had reigned, there was now the difficult, healing sound of truth. And the color the house had tried to erase became the very hue of its redemption, a testament that love, even when buried, leaves a mark no lie can ever fully conceal. If this story of hidden truth and redemption resonated with you, please share this video and subscribe to Tales Through Time for more powerful journeys into the heart of history. Your support helps us bring these important narratives to light.